The food was still warm, but no one had touched it. My sister's voice cut across the room like a knife. You either buy the stroller, the crib, and the house deposit, or don't bother showing up to my baby shower. Her words clung to the air, thicker than the steam rising from the untouched tea. My name is Elena. I'm 29. And if you think family greed has limits, stay tuned. I laughed then, soft but sharp. A $12,000 stroller? A down payment for a house? You've lost your mind. My hand trembled around my cup, though I kept my face steady. She slammed her phone onto the table, the registry glowing on its screen, an itemized list of demands masquerading as wishes. Then don't bother showing up, she snapped, her cheeks flushed. Her registry had become her battlefield, and I was the enemy refusing to pay the toll. Silence. Even the clock on the wall seemed to pause. I set my cup down gently, the clink echoing like a verdict. Fine, I said. 2 letters, enough to redraw the entire map of our family. That night, the registry email still sat in my inbox, bold and unread. I didn't delete it. I let it rot there, like a seed of something darker waiting to sprout. Have you ever had family cross your boundaries? Let me know in the comments. And as I stared at that glowing list, I realized something. Sometimes saying no isn't resistance. Sometimes it's the first strike. The next morning, my phone buzzed nonstop. Texts from cousins, aunts, even my mother. You know how sensitive she is. Just by one thing, at least. It's her first baby, don't ruin this. I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering, and then I locked it. The pressure in my chest wasn't guilt. It was rage disguised as calm. When I walked into the kitchen, the sunlight spilled across the counter, hitting the chipped mug I always used. My sister had given it to me years ago, back when gifts still carried love, not price tags. I ran my finger along the crack down its side, the faint split that never healed. It looked fragile, but it still held coffee. I whispered to myself, and she says, I don't give enough. By noon, my sister posted online. Some people would rather hoard their money than support family. Guess who won't be at my baby shower? Dozens of comments followed. Her friends clapped back with heart emojis. Strangers I didn't know joined in, but then a cousin added, Wait, she asked for what? The registry leaked. Screenshots bounced around group chats. The stroller's obscene price tag. The luxury crib. The house deposit. People gasped. People laughed. Suddenly, the silence wasn't on me anymore. My mother called again that evening, her voice brittle. Why couldn't you just stay quiet? I wanted to scream, but silence felt louder. The crack in that mug caught the fading light, and for the first time I saw it differently, not as weakness, but as proof. Even broken things could stand. And I decided I'd stand too. The baby shower came without me. Photos flooded social media. Balloons, cake, the gilded crib on display, like it was royalty's throne. My sister beamed in every shot, belly framed by satin ribbons, her hand resting possessively on a stack of wrapped boxes. The caption, surrounded by love from the people who actually care. But beneath the glossy filters, cracks showed. In one video, her husband's cousin muttered, 12 grand for wheels? That's a car, not a stroller. Another guest laughed nervously. Then the camera cut off. My phone buzzed again. Aunt Marjorie, we left early. She screamed at Uncle Paul for not bringing cash. Another message. The registry link isn't working. Did you shut it down? I hadn't touched it, but someone had. The page showed items removed by request of the creator. I sat in my apartment, lights off, only the hum of the fridge filling the silence. The cracked mug warmed my hands as if to remind me, hold steady. They're turning. 2 days later, my mother arrived unannounced. She dropped onto my couch, eyes glassy. Your sister. She's furious. People are gossiping. The down payment thing. Why did she even put that? I shrugged, because she thought she could. My mother's gaze, slid to the mug in my hand. You still use that old thing? She broke it, remember? I smiled faintly. And yet it still works. Her silence was an answer, a rare one. For the first time, I realized the tide wasn't against me anymore. It was shifting, and when tides shift, they don't just retreat. They drag everything with them. 3 days later, the family group chat detonated. Screenshots of her registry circulated like wildfire. The $12,000 stroller, the Italian crib, the optional $30,000 down payment. Cousins mocked it with laughing emojis. Uncles asked if it was satire. Even my grandmother, who never texted more than 2 words, typed, "Shameful." My sister's defense was vicious. "You all don't understand. Elena refused me first. She started this." But the more she spoke, the more she buried herself. The registry wasn't just a list anymore. It was evidence. Evidence of greed, of entitlement, of how far she was willing to push blood ties until they snapped. That night, my phone rang. It was my father. He rarely called unless it was serious. His tone was low, heavy. "You know, Elena, I thought you were being difficult. But after reading this, I can't defend her." My throat tightened. I wanted to feel victorious, but all I felt was hollow. Later, I scrolled through the shower photos again. In one, my sister clutched the stroller box like it was sacred, but the comments beneath had turned. People weren't congratulating, they were questioning. Who even asks family for a house deposit? This is embarrassing. I set the phone down, my eyes drifting to the cracked mug on the table. In the dim lamplight, that fracture glowed like a vein of silver, a flaw turned beautiful. And I thought, maybe some cracks aren't meant to be hidden. Maybe they're meant to remind everyone exactly where the break began. A week later, the fallout became impossible to ignore. The cousin stopped answering her calls. An uncle canceled the check he'd written. Even her closest friend posted a thinly veiled status. Entitlement disguised as tradition isn't family, it's theft. My sister lashed out everywhere. She stormed into my mother's house, screaming, "This is your fault. You never taught Elena loyalty." Plates rattled on the shelves as her voice cracked. Mom stood frozen, eyes darting to the doorway as if she hoped I'd walk in and fix it. But I wasn't there. I didn't need to be. That night, I received a message from a number I barely recognized, my cousin Leah. She rarely got involved. Her text was short, "We're with you. Enough is enough." I sat at my kitchen table, mug in hand. The crack along its side caught the glow of the overhead bulb, almost like a scar illuminated. It hit me. The mug had always been my sister's doing. She dropped it years ago, laughed, and said, "It's just a mug." I'd glued it back together, quietly. I'd kept it, quietly, just as I had kept every slight, every shove, every greedy demand. Now the fracture was public, and people were choosing sides. When Dad called again, his voice was tired. "Elena, she wants you to apologize to her, to salvage her image." I let out a slow breath. No, not this time. The silence on his end was long. And then, good. For the first time in years, my father and I were on the same side of a crack. And I realized, sometimes families don't break. They reveal where they were broken all along. 2 weeks later, my sister tried to rewrite the story. She hosted a family dinner, inviting everyone under the guise of peace. Photos went up online before dessert even hit the table. Her smiling, surrounded by half-empty seats. Most chairs were bare. I wasn't there. Neither were the cousins or the uncles who once funded her whims. She raised a glass in one clip, but her voice faltered. Family sticks together, even when people try to tear us apart. The camera panned, revealing too much empty space for her words to land. That same night, I received an email, subject line, apology letter. For a second, my heart thudded. But inside, it wasn't apology. It was accusation. She wrote that I had humiliated her, that I owed her silence, that I had turned the family against her. I closed the laptop, the glow fading into darkness. The cracked mug waited on the counter. I lifted it, felt its familiar weight. The scar down its side gleamed under the kitchen light, more honest than her words could ever be. Then something unexpected. Grandma called. Her voice, thin but steady. "Elena, I told her today, respect isn't bought. It's earned." She cried, not because she understood, but because she didn't. I pressed the mug to my lips, heat rising through it. For the first time, the fracture didn't feel like damage. It felt like truth, undeniable, permanent. And I thought, maybe revenge isn't fire. Maybe it's just standing still, while the flames eat only the one who struck the match. Another month passed, and the silence around her grew heavier than any insult. The cousins stopped tagging her in posts. Invitations no longer carried her name. Even at church, whispers followed her down the aisle. Words like greedy, entitled, ungrateful. One afternoon, I returned home to find an envelope slipped under my door. Inside was a check, canceled, voided, the one my uncle had once written for her baby fund. On the back, he'd scribbled, "Better spent teaching her a lesson." I held it between my fingers, the paper soft, fragile, but sharp enough to cut. That evening, Dad visited. He didn't sit, just stood in my doorway, hat in his hands. His eyes were tired, but softer. "She's asking where she went wrong," he muttered. Then, after a pause, I told her maybe she should ask you. The cracked mug sat between us on the table. Dad noticed it, tilted his head. "Still using that?" I nodded. "Every day." He gave a faint smile when I hadn't seen in years. "Funny thing about cracks," he said. "They show you where the strength really is." For once, we didn't argue. We just stood there, the silence less hostile, more like truce. That night, I typed a short message in the family group chat. Not to her, but to everyone else. Respect isn't purchased. It's practiced. I won't be apologizing for keeping my boundaries. No one argued. Not a single reply disagreed. And as I set the mug down gently on the table, I realized revenge didn't need an explosion. Sometimes it was as quiet as a family finally seeing clearly. The baby was born in spring. A niece I hadn't met, though her photo appeared in the group chat, cheeks round, wrapped in a hospital blanket. The comments rolled in, polite but thin. No shower, no gifts, no flood of money like my sister once expected. Just obligatory congratulations, clipped and distant. I didn't reply, not out of spite, but out of peace. Weeks later, a knock came at my door. When I opened it, she stood there, baby carrier in hand. Her face was drawn, her eyes red. For the first time, she looked smaller than me. "Elena!" Her voice cracked. "No one's helping." I thought they'd rally behind me. I gestured toward the chair, but she didn't move. She just stared at the crack in the mug on my counter. The same one she had broken years ago. "You kept it," she whispered. I nodded. "Because it still works." Her chin trembled. "I went too far." For a heartbeat, I almost softened. But then I remembered every demand, every public humiliation, every time she'd twisted family into chains. So I said gently, "You wanted a house bought for you, a stroller worth more than some people's cars, and you thought love was a transaction." She opened her mouth, closed it again. Silence swelled between us. "I don't hate you," I added quietly, "but I won't fund you. Not then. Not now." Her eyes welled, and she nodded, rocking the baby gently. That moment, I knew. Revenge hadn't been my weapon. Boundaries had. And sometimes the sharpest justice is simply refusing to break. Completed.